So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem is a really good film. I was just expecting so much more from it, especially as it is just so overhyped. I mean, I really did love the central message of this film, which is a desire to be fully accepted, which I feel like a lot of people can definitely resonate with, and it really does make it really relatable and really grounded. And I love the teenage confidence that these Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have in terms of young people feeling like they can achieve anything or just having so much bravery. And I feel like that aspect is really relatable as well, especially when you try to implant that into the really messed up adult world. Just seeing that contrast coming to life in this really cool animated film was really brilliant, especially as they are trying so hard to save the day and stop this evil gigantic mutant that just gets bigger and harder to beat. And the TMNT franchise has been around for so long. I mean, this is the 7th official film as part of the entire franchise, and there have been so many TV shows, and this new interpretation is also going to spawn into another TV series, as well as an additional suite of promised films that are going to be coming out as soon as the writer strike and actor strike is going to be completed. And it also did feel like a bit of a movie video game. And on that note, they are also going to have a tie-in video game. So this franchise really is going from strength to strength. And it is really brilliant that Mutant Mayhem, really did catapult this franchise back to the top, as they are going all in on it, and they really have breathed new life into this franchise, as both new fans can be attracted into it, and it will really please existing fans. And it's really cool that they've also done a bit of a new origin storyline. And I was watching some behind the scenes interviews, and they were saying, look, we know we tweaked some things, but actually we tried to make it more realistic and also modernizing it. And so from that perspective, I do actually think that the origin of these characters has worked really well. And the musical score is absolutely phenomenal. It really does get your heart pumping, adrenaline going, and is just so attention grabbing, and just works with all of the high stakes scenarios that all of these characters have to contend with. Now, as far as the animation is concerned, for me, it took a little while to get into it, as I thought, what, this looks a little bit unfinished, but then I found out that actually this was purposeful, as they wanted it to look like concept art and sketches, as of course, they really did want to focus all in, especially from Seth Rogen's perspective, into the teenage aspect of these characters. So they felt that the look and feel of this movie should be reflective and representative of this. By the end of this movie, I was all in on it, but I personally much prefer 3D slicker looking films from an animation perspective. That opening sequence was really good. I am so judgmental of certain films and TV shows in terms of what their opening sequence is, as this really does get the audience members set for what is going to come later, and a lot of films actually don't get an opening sequence right. But I thought this one was really brilliant in terms of how the Ninja Turtles were created from a mutant perspective, and then 15 years later, I thought it was really cool how they gave the turtles pure white eyes, as of course previous incarnations did make them look like this. And it also worked, as they were making fun of the fact that, they are reflecting a bit of a Batman opening, and all of those pop culture references. I mean, this movie was full of them, and there have been quite a few movies lately that have tapped into pop culture references. For example, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers did it really successfully, versus Space Jam: A New Legacy maybe didn't do it that well. But I thought it was really good, as they weren't afraid to talk about Warner Brother properties as well as Disney properties. But this is ultimately a Paramount property, so they always put Paramount right in the forefront in terms of all of the Nickelodeon references. And I just loved the Chris fight one, where they were showing, look, Chris Pine versus Chris Pratt versus Chris Evans. Who is the best Chris? And of course they're going to choose Chris Pine, as of course he is part of the Paramount family. I love the Shredder cameo. I thought that was really cool, and there is a bit of a tease of, I'm sure, much darker things to come as this franchise does expand. And it was really interesting, as originally Shredder was going to be the main villain in this film, as of course he is so iconic. But I think, certain franchises have done the right thing in terms of not stuffing their film with big characters, as you can then place them in future films, which Paramount incidentally is also doing with the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise in terms of introducing Knuckles in the second film, and then saving Shadow for the third film, which the hype level for that film is just going to be so high. And I'm just really hopeful that they do a bit of a similar thing which Super Mario Brothers did with their animated film, in terms of really leaning into the video game mythology and storylines. And I just hope that they get Shadow right. But anyway, I thought it was the right thing actually to not focus on Shredder and instead focus on Superfly, who was really good, as I feel like they really did give the Ninja Turtles a villain that they could actually relate to, and in some respects even potentially get tempted by. And on that point, if anything, I just love Superfly so much as a villain, especially because of his backstory, and how he was the first creature to be created. And incidentally, in other mythologies, the scientist that created him in the first place does actually become Superfly, but it was interesting that actually they kept them as two separate characters in this one. But if anything, like I said, I would have just loved a lot more with this character, especially about his backstory, how his thinking is taking place. As like I said, he just had the material of being such a compelling villain, but instead they just went down a really pathetic route, in my opinion, which is just making this guy such a big character and then just ultimately just bad for the sake of being bad. But they just had a potentially deep villain that they could have and should have just done so much more with. Especially as he has a bit of a similar experience to Splinter in terms of humanity really rejecting them and really not being nice to them. And this kind of makes them really resentful. But instead, with Superfly's turn of events, he actually went down the dark path, and Splinter just tried to, make himself a bit of a recluse and just hide him and protect himself and his children from society. But instead, Superfly actually went in such a vengeful path, a little bit like Darth Vader did. So I just wish we would have just explored a lot more with him. And he had some wicked one-liners. I mean, his epic one of, they smile in your face and then want to take your place literally gave me chills. As like I said, this character, you can just tell he's been through so much, emotionally and physically, and he just had the recipe of just being too iconic. But like I said, instead, not only did they go down a really silly path with him, they then just stuffed this movie with so many mutants that were just so distracting. You don't really care for any of them. They don't invest the time for you to get to know any of them, which I do think is the right thing. As you do want to focus on the primary characters, not only the Turtles, but also the villains, and of course the main secondary characters being April, Splinter, and a couple of the other ones. But like I said, they should have and could have just done so much more with Superfly. And I can see why they introduce a lot of mutant characters. They want to have a lot of other characters that are very similar to the Turtles, and they really want to show that actually this ooze did affect a lot of other creatures. But if anything, I just found them incredibly distracting and incredibly cumbersome, and it was just an excuse to get really high profile voice actors just to play other characters. As like I said, they really did not contribute anything really to the main plot, and they just turned on their leader so easily. I mean, I guess you could say, that is a little bit of social commentary also, that people just follow someone because they are fearful and scared of them, but really they don't fundamentally agree with what they're doing. So, that could have been an interesting storyline thread in terms of, the people that Superfly is trusting, actually they have no loyalty towards him, and him then just becoming this giant. Like I said, I felt Percy was just so disappointing and a little bit ridiculous, and I don't think it really honors the audience that much, as we have been so invested with all of the different character portrayals, and they just made this guy a bit of a big bad boss. But like I said, I would have much preferred it if we would have gone down a darker path, as it no longer felt grounded, and I would have just loved the psychological thriller horror aspects that they were introducing with the first couple of instances that you see Superfly suddenly just take characters out, kill certain people, and just serve as a bit of a mysterious evil figure. And he was really, really good in the first couple of scenes that you did see, especially as he was just so open to trust the Ninja Turtles. But I just felt like, the path that they did go down was fundamentally the wrong one. I loved Splinter. I thought he was really interesting in this movie. As like I said, he was a bit of a reflection of Superfly, and you could really see that Jackie Chan was just bringing so much to his portrayal. I absolutely love the fact that, he is a bit of a parental figure over the Ninja Turtles, and how he did actually try to go out in the human world and they were just so rejecting of him, and so he wants to be really protective of his children, but then also does want to train them up in case they ever do need to fight back. And his one friend was a cockroach, so when he does see a mutant version of a cockroach, he instantly falls in love with her, which I thought was a really nice touch. And it was really cool how when they were filming and producing this movie, they actually had all of the 4 main lead characters of the Ninja Turtles. The actors were actually voicing them together in a booth with all 4 of them together, whereas usually they just do one at a time. And so they were allowing them to improvise a lot of lines, and a lot of the lines that they did improvise did actually make it into the final film. And I just love how they made all of them really individual. For example, Leonardo is being a bit of a nervous leader. He has definitely got leadership qualities, but he's just being a bit nervous, which I think is really true for what a teenager would be like. Donatello was really, really smart, and I loved how, they gave him a little bit of tweaks in terms of giving him glasses, and just how they made this character narratively just being always outsmarting everybody else was really, really good. Michelangelo is obsessed with improvisation and then actually does do an improv class right at the end of this movie, and Raphael hilariously has got anger management issues, which was so good. I would have loved it if we would have explored the human characters a little bit more, as I loved how they were creating a little bit of subgroups. For example, we have the Turtles, we have Superfly, we have Superfly's men, we have the human characters, we have the human evil characters, who you could argue are actually worse than any of them. I wonder if they will actually explore this in future installments, as of course you did see that the human characters are actually connected to Splinter, so maybe they are doing a lot more evil, nefarious things, which we will find out about in future installments. April O'Neil, I think, was really, really cool. And I love how she's got her own Lois Lane type ambitions of wanting to be a really successful news reporter. And you really could see that, you know, she was able to see that, you know, the Turtles will be rejected by society. So if you are going to introduce them into society, then what is the best way that you can do this to give them the best chance of success? So, you know, overall, I did enjoy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. I feel like they definitely could have just done a lot more things to make the villainous characters even more compelling than they did do, because they were really, really good. And they did set them up absolutely brilliantly. And I feel like if they did focus on that so much more, this movie could have been absolutely incredible in my opinion. But, you know, I feel like it is a really great new franchise starter. And, you know, it did have some awesome fight sequences. And as far as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle characters are concerned, them and all of their world was coming together really, really well. And I'm genuinely really, really excited to see where on earth is going to go in the future. And so for all of those reasons, I'm going to give TMNT Mutant Mayhem a massive 6.5 out of 10. Now I'd love to hear what you thought of this film, so please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And I look forward to seeing you in my next video.